Hi, and welcome to this special Ashes episode of the Sussex Sport Weekly podcast. I'm Mark Dunford, and I'm joined by Sussex World journalist Frankie Elliott, Steve Bone, and Sam Pole. Sam was lucky enough to be there on Thursday at Old Trafford to see Zak Crawley's tremendous innings of 189 from 182 balls. The sad news is Australia have retained the Ashes thanks to the rain, meaning only 30 odd overs were able to be bowled on the last 2 days after England dominated the first 3 days. Zak Crawley was man of the match for his brilliant innings, and there were great contributions from Johnny Bairstow, Ben Stokes, Joe Root, Harry Brook, Moeen Ali with the bat, and Mark Wood strokes with the ball. England can still draw the series at the Oval this week, but the urn has gone. Steve, it's a rubbish way to retain the Ashes for the Aussies, isn't it? What's your feeling after that drawn fourth test?
Yeah, it's just one of deflation, really, I think, isn't it? The first 3 days of that test was so good, and it was just what we needed to do. You know, we went to Old Trafford knowing we needed to win. We had to be attacking. We had to, go for the jugular. Did all that. Got a big lead, and then 2 days of rain. It actually wouldn't have mattered if there'd been 1 day of rain. You know, if we could have had one full day to try to take those final wickets and maybe get a few runs if they got a lead. But, for rain to rule out all but the last 2 days was just heartbreaking for everybody. Really, a real sort of downer on what's been a great series.
Yeah, absolutely. Frankie, did England miss an opportunity? Firstly, batting for maybe too long, and secondly, not being on it enough in those 30 odd unexpected overs on Saturday. They just seemed a bit slower. Maybe they just weren't expecting to play on Saturday. But do you think there were some missed opportunities there?
No, I don't. I think if you looked at where England were, particularly after lunch on that third day, you were looking at the fact that they were needing to get a commanding position to really stake a claim in that match, and they did. You know, at the end of the day, they batted for about 100 or so overs, and were going at nearly 6 and over. So they've done pretty well to even get into that position as it is. And when they did eventually were all out, as Steve pointed out, they only really needed 2 sessions from the last 2 days to win the game. You were looking at, they had that evening session when they took 4 wickets, and on Saturday and Sunday we're looking at, hopefully, like I say, just the 2 full sessions, and you'd probably come away with the win. They only had 1, and barely even 1. So I don't really put any fault down to England, because that's one of the most dominant displays of an English team I've seen against Australia. I know there have been bigger margins of victory, but in regards to how they bullied and dominated a brilliant Australian team, they're the best test team in the world currently. They absolutely, from day one, just like I say, I've never seen an Australian team look so frazzled, so weak, so on the back foot, and that's all down to England's tactics and how they played. So it's bitterly disappointing, because as I said, I don't think they even needed that much time in those last 2 days to carry out the victory, but they didn't even get that. So I can't fault the England team for what they did.
Yeah, interesting point about them looking so frazzled. It was only on day 2 when Pat Cummins ran out of ideas, wasn't it? It was just like you said, I've never seen anything like it either. But there you go, and that was mainly down to Zak Crawley. Sam, you were there on Thursday. How impressive was it in the flesh watching that? And what was the day like overall? It seemed pretty exhilarating from where I was on my sofa. So.
Yeah, Zak Crawley's innings was probably more impressive in person than it was on the television, to be honest. He kind of knuckled down to begin with, especially after when Ben Duckett fell quite early. Him and Moeen Ali kind of steadied that innings, got to 50 each way. And then after that, it was just the most exhilarating piece of cricket I think I've seen anywhere, to be honest. The way I think he got his next 50 from 30-something balls. So he really, really took it to the Aussies after that. And yeah, especially Moeen Ali helped out as well. You've got Brook and Stokes as well, help pull their weight, and Root as well, hit an impressive 80 odd. So yeah, really impressive. And on the day as a whole, it all kicked off superbly with Anderson picking up Cummins off that first ball of the day. Really, really set things on the way. So yeah, it was possibly one of the greatest days I've seen in my cricketing experiences, and as well in Ashes cricket as well, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, it was a shame Joe Root didn't get his 100, because he thoroughly deserved it. I mean, that's possibly the most fluent I've seen Joe Root bat on that day. I don't know what anyone else thinks.
I think that was, like I said, the most impressive batting display England have ever put in. I think it's the first time most of England's top 7 have got over 50 runs each.
I think it's since 1930, the first time since 7 of
6 of the top 7. So I mean, that's an incredible display as it is. But the way they went about it, Zak Crawley scoring more than a run of ball. Joe Root looked incredibly fluent. Mo and Ali looked in great touch for his 50. That was a massively important partnership. And then Johnny Bairstow as well. I mean, how incredible was that? Very unlucky not to get 100, but really looked back to his best after what would have been a difficult leg break injury and a difficult series so far. He looked like the man he was last summer. So I've never seen so many players bat so well and so aggressively. It was really, really, really great to watch.
Yeah, I loved Ben Stokes' reaction when Bairstow hit that huge 6. It was great.
Yeah.
Sticking with that, Steve, we talked about top Ashes innings after Ben Stokes' effort at Lords. Where do you reckon Crawley's innings ranks for you?
Well, it is up there, isn't it, among the best we've seen? But I suppose the unfortunate thing for him is it's not resulted in a win, because I think in longer term, people will always remember the innings that helped their team win, more clearly than innings that didn't quite get the team over the line. I'm not saying it's Zak Crawley's fault that we didn't win. It would have been great for him for that innings to have been part of a win. But yeah, it was excellent, wasn't it? People have had question marks over Crawley. I've certainly doubted him at different times in his England career. He's had a lot of chances, and people say he's not got enough runs and not got enough big scores. But he's silenced a lot of those critics with that innings. He's probably now down that place now for some time to come in that England team. But I think in years to come, will we regard it in the same way as we think about Ben Stokes at Headingley 2019, Ian Botham at Headingley 81, Kevin Peterson at the Oval 2005, because those innings led to either series wins or test wins, individual match wins. I think they tend to stick in the memory a little bit longer, which is a great shame for Zak.
Yeah, you agree with that, Frankie?
I do. If you look at it solely from the perspective of the innings without the context of the game, I think it's the best ever. 189 off 181 balls against, like I say, the best test team in the world in a situation where England had to win against one of the best, the best bowling attack in the world as well. It's incredible. But as Steve rightly says, it doesn't come along with a victory or a series win, and therefore it just knocks down those ratings. Because, like I say, I remember the Peterson one at the Oval. That made him a superstar, because if he didn't have that innings, Australia might have won that test, and 2005 may not have been as famous as it was. Same with Ben Stokes at Headingley, Ian Botham, Alistair Cook at the Gabba as well. All those iconic innings are from memorable series wins or test wins. But I hope, in the same way that it worked for Peterson back in 2005, I hope, as Steve said, this is the start of Zak Crawley becoming one of the best opening batsmen in the world, because there's been lots of question marks about him, but no one's ever doubted his talent, and no one's ever doubted that he is good enough to play for England. Now he's shown he is capable of putting in a big score like that. It's about doing that again. Obviously, maybe not 189 off 181 balls, but playing to that level. Every test match, and not giving away his wicket so cheaply or making silly decisions, being aggressive, being on the front foot, and making down and setting off England on some really good innings performances. So while it may not go down as one of the best memorable Ashes innings of all time, it should be the start of something great for Zak Crawley.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Sticking with you, Frankie, it is for the Aussies, it's a bit bittersweet. Pat Cummings said there won't be any huge celebrations, just a few pats on the back after retaining the urn. Did they deserve to take the urn back home?
I'd see this. I'm a firm believer, whether it's in league tables or series, that the best team always wins, and the results or league table doesn't lie. I think this is the first time I've ever can say, and this sounds very bitter coming from an English person, that I don't feel the best team have won the urn. We don't know how the series is going to end up, but I feel England throughout the 4 tests have played the better cricket. I think they've played. They've been more entertaining. I think we've shown more courage and greater quality in both their bowling and their batting. Obviously, there have been some moments where that hasn't happened, but I feel that what's probably got Australia over their line is the experience, the big game experience of players who have been there and done it. I think Bazball, as we say, is still quite in its early formations, and maybe that's what we saw. There was some slight cracks in this what has been such a glorious last year of the McCullum-Stokes era. We probably saw that in the first 2 Test matches, but I feel that Australia have got away with the weather, because I feel that England would kind of comfortably win this one and then take that momentum into the 5th Test. But it also sounds bitter, because Australia will argue that they made the better decisions in those first 2 Test matches. You know, England didn't cope very well with the short bowling game at Lords. They didn't bowl very well in the first innings of that game and gave Australia a chance to get ahead. The early declaration at Edgbaston, there are a number of, the poor fielding in those first Test matches. There are a number of things that England didn't do well, but there's also so many things they did. And I think Australia were very timid in this 4th Test and really got away with it, because they deserve to be beaten in this 4th Test 100%. So it's the only time I can ever say that I don't think the best team have won.
Yeah, Sam, do you agree with that?
Yeah, most definitely. I think England have been the better team in the series overall. It's just those big moments. I think that Australia have been the better side and really kind of taken it away from England in those moments. I mean, we've been close in all 3 Tests, and I think especially this one could have been the one that broke the Australian spirit, to be honest. It's just the weather has saved them for this one, and then that momentum, hopefully, it probably would have seen England through to that 5th Test. But yeah, as Frankie said, it's those moments, those little things that make the difference ultimately in a 5-match series. So yeah, I agree. Yeah, England definitely the better team, but Australia at the end of the day retained.
Yeah, it's an interesting point Frankie says about his first time he's thought that the best team haven't won. Steve, do you agree with that as well? Do you?
Yeah, I do agree with what's been said. The Australians won't care one bit, will they?
No.
One bit about us saying it or anybody saying it, because the fact is they came here as Ashes holders. They knew that drawing the series was enough. They're always going to want to win a series, as are England, but at the same time their job was to come here and over the 5 Tests make sure they didn't lose the series, and they can't lose the series now. What England have to do now, and I'm sure we'll go on to this, is make sure they continue the momentum they've built up and get it back to 2-2 with a win at the Oval, because I think it's 2001, isn't it, since the Australians last won a series here. Obviously, we had the 2-2 in 2019. England won the 4, I think, before that. So I still think that's important, although it's not going to bring the Ashes into our possession. I think that's got to be the next aim for England now.
Yeah, definitely. There's been a lot of talk as well, and we've just touched on bitter England fans like you, Frankie, but mainly from bitter England fans, about weather rules, length of tests, and that. Should they be changed to allow rain-hit games more time to finish? I mean, my view is, I think if there's a full day rained off, then maybe look at a reserve day. But I mean, it'll be a lot to change it. I mean, what do you think, Steve? Do you think there should be any changes to the way we handle rain in England?
I don't think there should be any change to the number of days set aside for a Test match. I think if you set aside too many days, if you set aside 6 days, for example, what are you going to do about a game that has gone 5 days but hasn't had any interruptions and is still heading for a draw? Unlikely to happen with England these days, of course, but there will be matches that are drifting on like that. Do you give them a 6th day as well? I think that's. I'm certainly not in favour of 4-day tests, and never have been. But I don't think you want to extend it from 5 days. I think what they could look at is making up for lost time within the 5 days. And I think there were times during this test where they could have been on the field playing and weren't. Could have played for longer. I certainly think teams should be made to get the 90 overs in a day. I think it's ridiculous that you stop at 6:30 or whenever if you've only bowled 83 overs. Play on till 8 o'clock if you have to. It's 90 overs in a day. You should be able to bowl them. So I think there are things you can do within the rules and within the sort of the things we do to make up for the weather. But I personally don't think you should be looking at reserve days. I can understand why it's done for a one-off test like the World Test Championship final, because that is a one-off. But in a series, I don't think you need to do it.
No, Frankie?
Yeah, I think Steve's right. I think there's more you can do within the 5 days rather than extending days. I mean, the over rate thing is a disgrace at the moment. I don't know why there are no rules in place to look at that. There was one session, I think, on the second day that had 25 overs, or even maybe even 24. Ridiculous. It's absolutely, and it's not the Australians' fault. I mean, there's nothing to stop them from doing it. So there's that issue. I think there's also the things you can be more flexible. If you lose a day, like Steve said, you can start earlier, you can finish later. There are ways and means of getting the overs back in within the 5 days. I think there is a lot to be, like Joe Root said, I believe yesterday, that it's light until 10 o'clock. Why can't we play? And he's not wrong. He's not wrong. They've spoken before about if you lose sessions or overs to light, to start early the next day. That can work the other way by extending the time if the light's still there. So obviously you're going to look for reasons as to how you can stop this from happening again, and rightly so, because it's such a dismal way for a test match and vital test match to end because of rain washing out 2 days. But there are certain things that cricket needs to do anyway to make it sure that they can get the overs in that are very much quick fixes rather than these complex ideas that are coming out afterwards. So no to extra days, but certainly to changes within the days can definitely be made.
Yeah, Sam, any different views?
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with Frankie and Steve. Yeah, just keep it within the 5 day session. And especially, I mean, what else could be changed is that if you know that rain's coming potentially, that's going to wash out a day, that you do extend the day before and the day previous, if you know what I mean, just to try and ensure a result at the end of the day, so a test match doesn't end like this. But yeah, as Frankie and Steve have said, just within the rules, don't bother with an extra day. It doesn't really help out and sort anything out. So yeah.
Well,
that's an interesting point. Sorry, Steve, carry on.
So one thing I would say on that is it's quite rare for rain to have such a sort of certain bearing on a game where you know who's going to win. Normally, if you lose a day of a test match to rain, it kind of doesn't affect the result in the, it may have been heading for a draw, or either team could have won. For a game to be going one way after 3 days and then hardly have any play for 2 is very unusual.
Yeah, and I think that's the only reason we're talking about it as well, because it's decided the series. Well, yeah, exactly. But an interesting point you made, Sam, about knowing that the rain's coming and extending days before. On a completely different level, on Saturday in the Sussex Cricket League, when I was umpiring, I was at Roffey versus Preston Nomads. Everybody knew the rain was coming, and there were people saying, "What's the point of even starting?" And it's like, well, or can we make it like a 5 over game, because we know the rain's coming at this point, just so we can get a result. Roffey are trying to escape relegation. Preston Nomads are trying to win the league. That both teams wanted a game, wanted a result, but they knew they were going to end up with 10 points, kind of thing, because of the abandonment. So. But if you'd done that and then the rain doesn't come, you look a bit stupid. So I don't know. It's an interesting point you raise. It was forecast for about a week in advance that it was going to be raining all day Saturday, all day Sunday, wasn't it? So could they have done something like that? But if it doesn't rain,
the other difficult thing is forecasting the weather, because, as you say, you don't know. You just can't plan, can you? You don't know. You can't say for sure it's going to rain all day in this town on this day. So. Yeah. Sometimes some things you just have to put up with.
It's a good discussion. On to the Oval now. That starts, I think it's Thursday this week, isn't it? England will have the bit between their teeth, won't they, Steve? Can't see them not winning this test, can we? It's got to be 2-2.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think it'll be I don't think it'll be as one-sided as Old Trafford. I think Australia will come back a little bit from that. But yeah, the momentum is with England, and they are going to be desperate to draw the series 2-2 now, and not lose it either 3-1 or 2-1 if it's another draw. Unlikely to be a draw, isn't it, over 5 days? So yeah, you would think they'd be up for it even more than some of the earlier tests, really. It'd be interesting to see what sort of atmosphere we get at the Oval. Will it start off a little bit flat because the crowd know we can't win the Ashes? I don't know. The Oval has seen some classic Ashes deciders over the years, hasn't it? 2005 being the big one. But yeah, I'd say England are strong favourites to win this. Australia, not that they've got nothing to play for, obviously they've got series win to play for, but I think England will have the edge for that reason.
Yeah. Well, is there a fear, Frankie, that the wind has been knocked out of England now that they've lost the urn? Or do you think they'll be fine?
There could be. I think the one thing I would say about, as we talked about, just the rain, just that had been there. I think one of the things that maybe Ben Stokes kept England batting in for so long in that test was to set a precedent to the Australian team to be like, you need this rain to come because we are dominating you so much. It really sets a thing in the back of the Australian players' mind where they are literally praying for rain, and that's not an Australian or any elite sporting team's mentality, whether they're hoping for rain because they can't compete against the side they're facing. So I think that's why part of the tactic was like, we need, if this inevitable draw comes, we're still in the ascendancy, and that's what England technically are, obviously, without having the prospect of regaining the urn. So they need to keep that momentum because they're playing really well. They've been the best side for certainly the last two test matches. They're bowling brilliantly. Chris Woakes is on fire, so is Mark Woods. So from that standpoint, in regards to how they're playing, they should be favourites, but it'd be very difficult to motivate themselves to do so because Australia will be incredibly motivated, I would say, not only off the back of what's been a poor performance, but also in 2019, I think they kicked themselves because they didn't win that fifth test when in 2019 they were far the better team. They were much better than England. They should have won that series quite comfortably. So I think they were speaking in that dressing room before the over, being like, we haven't won a series here since 2001. We've done our first job, but we need to make sure we do the second job because we didn't do it in 2019. And most of this team were there in 2019. So I think it'd be very, very difficult for England. But if they continue to play the way they have done, they should win, but they'll find it a lot more difficult. And I just want to point out quickly as well, although Australia have not been the best team this series, they've shown why they are the best test team in the world, because even when things are going against them, they still manage to pick out a result. Marnus Labuschagne has not been playing well this series, but in the deciding innings when England had just knocked 591, he gets 100, a really gritty 100, a century abroad, which he hasn't done for a while. So it shows the quality this team have, that even when things are going against them, even when they're not playing well, they can still pick out performances like that. So that's where you have to give credit where it's due.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Labuschagne, obviously, if England had got him in the first couple of overs on Saturday, England probably win that test. So, yeah, absolutely. No, it's a really good point. So, Sam, can we start with you? Can we see any changes for this one for either side, do you think, with the lineups?
For an England perspective, I think the only one off the top of my head was maybe dropping Anderson for Tong. I mean, Anderson in particular look at his best in the Old Trafford test. So there's been kind of question marks over if he'll be selected. I know he's just come back from a fitness issue as well. So that can be the only one. I mean, there had been question marks over Bairstow, but that innings that he took part in, he's bound to have a place in for the fifth test. From an Australian perspective, I don't think so, to be honest. I think they just keep on keeping on to see. I mean, you've retained, so why change things now? To be honest, I know they looked in disarray in that fourth test. Maybe bringing a spinner, but apart from that, I can't see maybe any changes from the Aussies.
Yeah, Frankie.
Yeah, from the England perspective, I can't imagine many changes because they played so well. The Anderson one would possibly be the final with the only change, but I would imagine this might be his last ever Ashes test.
Sorry, it'd just be a massive shame if that test just happened was Jimmy Anderson's last test, wouldn't it? Yeah,
I don't think they'll allow that to happen. He doesn't deserve that to be the case. So I think Ben Stokes will give him the Oval Test match, because I mean, you can never predict with Anderson, because I said 5 years ago that would be his last test, but here he is still running in. So this could be his last Test match. So I think they will give him the opportunity to play in that one. But other than that, you keep as it is because everyone played so well. For the Aussies, I don't think they'll go with two all-rounders again. Cameron Green, as great as he is in the field, he has not looked particularly great, but certainly with the bat. So maybe I would say a spinner, especially at the Oval, would be needed. I know the spinner they have as reserve is not to the same level as Nathan Lyon, but it just gives them a better balance in attack as well and takes the pressure off Cummings, Hazelwood and Stark, because fair play to them. They looked knackered by day 3 because they were having to continuously to run in. In the batting lineup, I think they'll stay as they were. But yeah, the Cameron Green change I can see happening.
Yeah, I thought they looked really imbalanced with Mitch Marsh and
Hugely.
Cameron. Yeah. And
Hugely.
but what was good to see as well is how we like Zak Crawley in particular. As soon as Travis Head came on as the spinner, they just took him apart and then just didn't give the Australian parts time to rest, which was great to see. Steve, any changes for you?
Yeah, like Sam, I think Tongue for Anderson is one they should consider, but I don't think they will leave Anderson out. I wonder if they might bring Tongue back in place of Wood for this one. I know Wood's been playing very well, but now the Ashes can't be won. Might they think that he needs another rest? He's bowled quite a lot in these couple of tests, so I'd like to see Tongue given another go somehow, or even might they decide that Broad needs a rest? I don't know. I've literally just thought that off the top of my head. I haven't put any thought into that at all. They probably don't. Not going to make any other change. They're not going to change that batting lineup, are they? If 6 out of the top 7 have got 50s behind them. Bairstow wasn't dropped when he wasn't playing well, so he's certainly not going to be dropped or rested now. Ali at number 3 came off as a batsman. He hasn't been great with the bowling, but I think they'll stick with that for lack of other options. With Australia, I just wonder if they might experiment. There's been some talk of whether they bring back the spinner and move somebody like Marsh up to open with Khawaja in place of Warner and just give Warner a rest. Don't think Warner will want a rest, but they might just have a look at that. They'll probably want to give the spinner a little bit more experience of playing against England in case he needs to again in the future. So I don't know, but there's not going to be too many changes on either side, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, I think we all know the answers to this from all 3 of you. But what are your predictions for it? Starting with you, Sam. Final test.
England win all the way.
Yeah, simple as that. Frankie.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for an England win, but I think it'll be a lot tighter.
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, I think England bat first, get a big score on the first day, as they did. I keep going on about 2005 because it was the best series ever. But I think they'll look to do that again, put the pressure on Australia, and I think they will. It could be close again. It could be a nervy final day, but I think England will win.
Yeah, I want to see England bat first at the Oval. It'd be great to see them get 400 or 500 on that first day. It'd be amazing. Yeah, I'm going for a win as well. Well, thanks for your time, guys. What will be an interesting discussion next week after when we do our Ashes 5th test sort of review. I won't be on that, but whoever will be on it, is how different the squads will look in the next Ashes series in Australia. Because there are a lot of players playing now that will not be playing in that series, we know for a fact. So be good. Yeah, that'll be a good discussion point. But thanks for your time. We'll be back with the Sussex Sport Weekly podcast on Thursday, talking all things Brighton and Crawley Town. And you can check out all the latest sports stories on sussexworld.co.uk. Cheers, guys.